Perfect. So thank you for doing this interview. Just by way of context for the audience, so I'm Zawe Publius. I am a PhD student in performance studies, and I'm helping out with Studio Theater's Dramaturgy Dig Deeper website. So with me, we have Julia Van Dam, Hannah Wigglesworth, and Sophie Healey. And we'll be talking about Don Juan Comes Back from the War, which opens next week. Don Juan was originally slated for last season, and then the pandemic happened. How do you rehearse for a play in a pandemic? Like, what is that process like?
Well, actually for me, I guess one of the biggest things that's different about this is, well, obviously we're trying to keep social distance. So all of the blocking kind of revolves around whether or not we're able to do things from 6 feet apart. And also having the masks is like something to get used to for us as actors for sure. But for me, it's kind of like, other than that, it's felt pretty normal, quote unquote normal. It just feels really good to be in the room with other people. And so even though we have these extra like barriers between us, it still feels like a rehearsal hall. It still feels like something that I'm used to. One of the things that was challenging was like when we first came into the room, having the COVID presentation and having all of the like protocols really clearly laid out for us, which is really important. But for me, it was like a bit overwhelming, sort of like all the worst case scenarios. But I recognize that that's really important to do, and we all feel safer knowing that there are protocols in place. But yeah, that's my perspective on it.
Yeah. I think that an interesting thing that kind of came with rehearsing in the circumstances we're in is the spacing of everything became very, very important for health reasons. And so it kind of like played into the way that everything was sort of choreographed through the blocking. So it ended up being that we have a lot of like parts of the show that are really dance like. And it really adds another element to everything we're working with already, where instead of being able to be physically close, we instead get to have like this really interesting kind of like sort of nebulous relationship with the other actors on stage, where we have to like, for safety, be a certain distance apart, but then it kind of creates its own little choreography. And it's like fun to play with too, because you kind of can see like within the parameters what you can do with the blocking, and it's fun. It's been good.
Awesome. And from what I understand of the structure of the play, it sort of lends itself to that sort of experimentation anyway. Each of you plays like a lot of characters, like a lot. How do you keep track of that, and who's doing what, and sort of what the resonances between sort of like being all of these characters?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have like a straight answer for that, but I have noticed, and this is something that I've talked to Amy, our director, about a little bit, is that there kind of seems to be a commonality between, so like, for example, I play like 4 or 5 different women, but it kind of seems like these women all have there's a similar thread that runs through all these women. So like Christy, for example, plays very much like a mother archetype. Roanne plays very much like a violent kind of woman, like she's always there to like mess something up. And I've kind of found that my characters all kind of have this like vulnerability to them. And that kind of helps me keep track of like the story. But I don't know, it's not that hard to keep track of once you're in it, because it kind of just feels like you're on this track, you know what's coming next. Because it starts kind of with this like party scene, and then it kind of is like a descent after that, which kind of helps me keep track of like where my energy is at any given moment. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like just to the point of the archetypes, like there are, I feel like a lot of the characters in the show are archetypes that we're playing. Like I play a young girl and a prostitute, and so those are like very opposite, but like archetypes that the playwright is kind of like playing with. I find for me like a lot of it has to do with each character's relationship to Don Juan, because he is like the constant throughout the whole show. So I kind of like find each character as I figure out how I feel about this man and like what his relationship is to me. And that's really like, it's really different for each character that I play. And then also just like a more technical like acting thing. Um, my biggest thing when I play different characters in a show is like to find their body, and like to move like them, and that really helps me figure out like who this character is, and how like how they move through the world, and like what the world like what how they relate to people around them. So yeah, just like how like where my center of gravity is, and like how quickly I move and stuff like that, really helps.
Yeah, kind of similar to Hannah's point. I also start with the character body when I'm working on a character as well. And I found that because all of the women, all the characters in the play have this through line of grief running through them, through every track, there's just this different type of grief. And so I started out with finding out like where in the body every character of mine carried their grief. And that kind of was where I started. And from there, it sort of just built on that.
Awesome. Yeah. So then what has been sort of the most difficult part of preparing for these roles? Or the easiest part?
um, hmm.
I think for me personally, kind of the most difficult thing has kind of been to negotiate my impulses with what we're allowed to do, because so much of the time what I want to do is like get really close to everybody, and because it's written as a very intimate show, it's like natural to want to like touch Don Juan or like touch the other people in the scene. So that has been a good challenge for me. But I think another thing that has been challenging is just like knowing when you come off stage from something that's like very intense and emotional, to be able to like release that, just because I think the three of us are all very like connected to our emotions and like what our characters want, and because it's set in such a historical time of grief and pain and just all of these things, knowing how to like let go of that when you come off stage. And like I'm starting to find like some rituals for me that help me get into a character right before the scene, and what rituals help me come out of that and release that energy when I come out. I think that's been really important in the process.
Yeah, it's like the subject matter in this show is definitely heavy, and each of the characters that we play go through are in a time in their life that's very difficult and uncertain, and just nobody knows what is in store for them or what the outside world holds. So it's all very, it's like very emotional. And when you are able to connect to that in a character, that's like such a gift as an actor. But also, yeah, like Julia was saying, it can be hard to like release those things afterwards, and it's not good to carry them home every night after rehearsal. So like rituals like that are really important. Yeah, and one thing that I was going to say was just after being at home a lot and being on Zoom a lot, and kind of like trying to figure out how to act on Zoom, um, it was a challenge, and like something that we were all really looking forward to, but a challenge for me at least, to like expand into the space at first and like feel all this space around me, and just remember what that's like, and like ground myself with like the person who's across from me, and not on Zoom. So that at first was challenging, but now it feels really just so good to be back doing that again.
Yeah, I really learned the true importance of like a proper cool right after a show, and like the physical and the psychological importance of it, because on one hand it's like very difficult sometimes to just have to kind of put your body through this big emotion and this expansion, and then to put your mind through it as well. And then a lot of us, like all of us in the show, do like really, really kind of like strenuous vocal and physical tasks. And so like getting to like warm down afterwards and just like make sure everything is still in working order the next day has become very important for this show, especially. So learning how to do that still. Not perfect at it yet, but I'm getting there.
Awesome. So from what I understand, each of you are in the BFA program. Is that correct? Perfect.
Yeah.
So like, how then has this experience sort of helped sort of, I guess, like your learning goals in the program, or sort of the I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, no, I think that's what I wanted to say.
I mean, like, just the first day that we went onto the Tim stage days ago, and really got to work the scenes in the space, I was like, oh boy, like this is like the expansion we've been like hearing about for all these years, and this is like the energy level that we need to be working at in order to fill this space. And so just getting to this stage was a big kind of step for me, and it really forced me to put all of my training I've been doing for the past few years into action. So it was really cool. It was a very like strange moment in my like time here to finally be like, okay, like time to put all those voice classes to work now.
Yeah, it for me, if like that first day being on the stage, we did a voice workshop with our voice teacher, and it's so interesting to like get to know this space that we've heard so much about. Like in fourth year, you're in the Tims, and you know it's like this big space that you have to fill, and figuring out like how resonance works in that space, and like using our cheekbones, and like having to aim for certain parts of the stage so that it resonates properly into the audience and stuff. Just kind of like very exact things like that are super interesting to me. And also, as far as like the play itself goes, like just the experience of getting to play so many characters who are so different, all in one like short period of time, and like what that feels like in my body, and how I can like shift really really quickly into things. Yeah, I feel like it's a culmination of a lot of the work that we've done in just like creating character bodies, and also like trusting the work that you do, and not questioning yourself too much, because that's really easy to do, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It just doesn't. So like that, like this is an exercise in that too. After a long time of like being in classes, and everything's for like your teachers and stuff, now it's for us, and so like taking ownership of our performances, and just like doing things that feel, because they feel right to me, instead of hoping that it's the right thing on the outside. I feel like that's what I'm still learning. It's not as if like I learned that yesterday and now I know it. But yeah.
Yeah, for me, I agree a lot with what Hannah was just saying about like finding what feels good for you and like owning those choices. And I can struggle a lot with like self-doubt and that like conversation with yourself where you can be very like harsh, you know, your own worst critic. So this is like a really good experience in terms of just like owning what you're doing. And also I've just like I've I've really looked forward to this the most in like our whole program, like because we get to work with all the other programs in the department. So like getting to work with Jeremy has been so amazing. Like he's an incredible designer, and working with Amy and then with our ASMs and with Francis as our stage manager. And it's just like, I don't know, that's what theater to me is about, is like coming together with everybody else to create something and have one common goal to like share with an audience. I don't know, like it's just so wonderful to be able to be with the community again after all these months of isolation. It just feels so good to be back in the hall with everybody. Yeah.
Awesome. So, I mean, so do you have a lot in common with any of your characters, or are they so far from your day-to-day experience that it's just like completely embodying something different?
I personally feel like I have not with all of my characters necessarily, but I definitely feel like I have a commonality with each of my characters. And for me as an actor, I always try to find a commonality that I have with the character, because I don't always think of it as like a character. I tend to like to think of it as, no, this is like me in this situation, and with this backstory, who would I be? And that's kind of like the framework that I come from. So I think that I do have common themes with the characters that I play. And then it's like, it's a treat to find what you don't have in common, because it's exciting to find like what you don't have in common with them, because that's what you can like stretch into. Yeah. I don't know, that's kind of a convoluted answer to that.
I feel like I have something in common with I have lots of in common with my characters, because I created my characters, and like so even though on paper I really don't have much in common with them at all, like um because I don't live in like post-war Berlin, and but yeah, like Julia was saying, I think I really try to find like things that I have in common with them. Um, so like, um, or at least that I can understand their motivation for doing things. Because it's like that human condition thing of just like you have to justify for yourself with each character that you have, no matter whether you believe that what they're doing is right, like why someone would behave that way. And I you have to like put yourself on the same level as your character and be able to have empathy for them. So I feel like in doing that, I find a lot of things that I have in common with my characters, just basic level of like wanting wanting to feel safe, and wanting to feel loved, and like that's I think that's what a lot of my characters are looking for, like to feel like they have control over their lives. Like, especially right now, a lot of us feel like really out of control, and we understand what it feels like to wish that we had more control over what's going on in our lives. So like, yeah, I feel like in that way, I do have a lot in common with them. but like also at the same time, I'm not like an 11-year-old girl and stuff like that, you know? So yeah.
But you were once.
I once was, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to never judge any character that I play, because I feel like if you start out in a place of judgment, then you don't really have anywhere to go. Um, and I think that it's just like a matter of finding what little commonality, or what, like, if I have lots in common with the character, all the better, I guess. It's easier to kind of empathize, but I really like when it's harder to empathize with the character I'm playing. Like I like finding, like, kind of trying to like get to the point where I really need to work to understand why someone's doing something that they're doing. And I really like enjoy playing characters that are quite different than I am. And it's great to be able to play characters that are living in this time period, because it's also not really that different in terms of like kind of like emotion wise. We've all kind of been in this chaotic year, so it's not that difficult to imagine a situation where it's just a time of chaos and grief and suffering. And it's interesting to be able to look at that through the lens of all of these different people.
Cool. I guess my next question is, why this play now? What do you hope that audiences sort of take away from this play? I think you've sort of touched on that, but if you could say more about that.
Well, this play comes, I mean, first of all, really interestingly, this play was chosen by Amy and Jeremy a long time ago, but it's actually set in 1918, which is the last flu pandemic. So it's kind of like just a coincidence that happened. But I think some of the just like fear of like what comes next, or uncertainty about what comes next, is something that these characters experience a lot. Like Don Juan, and then also all the women around him, just really have no idea what the world is going to be like when they next step out their door, and you know, all these soldiers come home, and what does that mean? So I really relate. I can really relate it to now in that way of just, and I mean, for everyone right now going through, like, living through this pandemic, but also for us as students, like, we're stepping out our door into a very unknown world after we graduate. So I think, I mean, the play doesn't offer a lot of answers in that way. But I think it might be kind of false to try to offer answers right now. I mean, I think there's a lot of hope, and you can feel like positive and hopeful about that, like, good things will come of this. And I think some of the characters are able to find that in the end. But I also feel like in seeing this play, it might just help people feel like, to see that this has happened before and we got through it, and to see people in a different, like, it's not exactly our scenario. It's not COVID. We're not all wearing masks, so it's not too on the nose, but it is sort of like reassuring maybe to see people like experiencing the same things that we are now, and just to feel less alone, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I really like asking the questions and maybe not always having the answers, and that show really kind of delivers on that. Asks a lot of important questions, and I think the way that the show deals with intimacy, and that could be physical or emotional intimacy, I really, really think that that is something that a lot of people are thinking about right now, in this time of kind of, again, like isolation and being kind of physically very far apart from other people. And it's been a challenge to sort of have this show where it is about physical intimacy and the lack of emotional intimacy, and then having that kind of almost reversal happen where it's like, well, we can't be physically intimate in the show on stage, but like how can we bring that, and how can we bring those ideas to the forefront without necessarily like showing that. And I think it's going to be really, really cool to see, and I think it's a good thing to be thinking about right now.
Cool. So do you have a favorite line or favorite moment in the play?
I have a scuffle with Julia at one point, which in the script is it's written as we like physically grapple with each other, and so we had to sort of figure out a way to do that without touching each other. So I think that'll be pretty fun, and I always have fun when we do it. It's my favorite like bit in the show to do.
I think some of my favorite moments in the play came from things that we had to change because of physical distancing, actually. Like stuff like that where you're forced to be more creative because you can't just do the thing it says in the stage direction. So there's that moment, and then Garrett, who plays Don Juan, Garrett Ross, and I have this moment with a blanket where it says that we're supposed to kiss, but instead we have this like long pink blanket, and we just sort of like slowly like move closer to each other with the blanket, and for some reason that feels way more intimate than if I actually just kissed him. Like, and it's kind of like weird, and you don't really understand what's happening, but it's also very like, I think it's clear at the same time like what's going on. So stuff like that. We added water guns into the play because we were supposed to be in a bath together in the first scene and like splash each other, but we couldn't do that, so we were like, how about a super soaker? So and that's really fun.
Yes.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite lines in the show is Garrett has this line as Don Juan. He's in a nunnery and he's talking to these 4 nuns, and he says, "I've always wanted to fuck a nun." And it's just so like every time he says it, I like blush on stage. Like, it's such a great moment. And then he goes about trying to seduce these nuns, and he just like says all these things, and it's very it's just so funny. I love it. I can't wait for people to hear that line, because people always laugh when he says that, because it's just so like, oh my God, I've never heard someone say that before. That's hilarious. Yeah, that's probably my favorite moment.
Fantastic. So then what do you get up to when you're not rehearsing a show? How do you sort of, what hobbies and like activities and stuff in normal situations?
We're all like, what else do we
We're
do?
like, what do we do? We've been at school for like every single day for hours on end. Yeah.
I like to read. I like to do yoga. I forget, what did I do before we couldn't do anything? Like go dancing. I don't know. I miss that.
Yeah, I really like I like drawing a lot. I like reading. I'm reading Station 11 right now, which is about a fictional flu pandemic, and it was published in 2014, I think. So it's interesting. It's about a group of actors who are like traveling around performing Shakespeare. So it's very like surreal to be reading that right now, but I like it. It's good. And I used to love going to the movies, so I really looking forward to the day when I can go back to a movie theater. That was really fun.
I right now like watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race, because it's nice to watch something that's so colorful and is basically to like lift you up. Sometimes like at the end of the day of rehearsing the show, that's like just what I need, is to watch some drag queens like lift me up. And yeah, I like doing yoga and Pilates. That's like good for me and my mind. And yeah, I have pets, so spending time with them and my partner, and this pandemic has made me like go on walks a lot more. So that's one thing that I love about Edmonton, is our river valley is so amazing, and it's almost like thanks to the pandemic that I've like discovered it more. So that's a plus to the pandemic, to be honest.
I also love baking. I forgot about that. I love baking because it's so immediate, and you have a thing that you made and then you can give it to people and they enjoy it. You know, it's like, I feel like nothing happens like immediately anymore, and it's just nice to be like, I made this thing, here it is. It's yours now, you know? Yeah.
Cool. So any final thoughts on the show or anything else?
I hope people enjoy it. We're doing we're doing a recording, so people will get to see it. It's going to be a 3-camera edited recording, and it's going to be available for what we hear is a modest ticket price. So we're disappointed that not very many people will be able to be live in the audience, but we're really excited that people will be able to see it. So that's a blessing. We're happy about that.
Come see it. It's amazing. There are 1,000-pound set pieces that are being like flown in, and yeah, it's, the set design is amazing. The costumes are awesome. Everyone's worked really hard. We've got like equity actors and volunteers and the 3 of us, and it's been a real labor of love, I think. Yeah, it's a beautiful show, and I hope people come and see it.
Yeah. And then as much as we've been talking about like how dark the show can be and how sad it is, oftentimes it's also very, very funny. There's lots of like really, really good comedy in the show, and it's very fun to watch. It's a very entertaining piece, and like it's just fun to be in. Like we're having fun, and if you're feeling like you're lacking live theater and like that joy, that specific joy you get from seeing live theater, I think that'll scratch the itch there.
Perfect. Cool. So I think we can end it there. Let me stop